Pokemon is a game that is heavily rooted in tradition, with every game having 3 starters that are Grass, Fire, and Water type, a set of 8 gym leaders, an Elite Four and champion to defeat, as well as many other consistent design elements. For the most part, Game Freak sticks to these components that they've established, but there are times where they break from these traditions and really make us question if it was even a tradition in the first place. So in this video, I'm going to be discussing times when Game Freak broke the unwritten rules since they threw off the consistency of a previously established tradition, either for better or for worse. First, we have the Gen 8 fossils not being Rock type. Fossil Pokemon were introduced in Generation 1, and the traditional idea behind them is that the player either digs up a fossil from the ground or has an NPC give them a fossil, which can then be brought to a lab to be revived into a Pokemon. In every generation before 8, the fossil Pokemon were Rock type, either pure Rock or a dual Rock type. To an extent, this makes sense since fossils are extracted from rocks. However, the main issue with this, and one of the reasons why many fans dislike this tradition, is that the Rock type sucks. Rock on its own has 5 weaknesses defensively, and while its inherent offensive properties are good, pretty much all Rock type attacking moves that aren't signature moves suck. So, forcing these Pokemon into being Rock type is less than ideal. In Gen 8, we were introduced to the fossil Pokemon Dracozolt, Arctozolt, Dracovish, and Arctovish, which break this rule since none of them are Rock type. You could interpret this as Game Freak just wanting to mix things up, but it also likely has a connection to their lore. These fossil Pokemon are based on the idea of paleontologists incorrectly rearranging bones. In Sword and Shield, you have to combine multiple of these fossils together to turn them into one of these fossil Pokemon, unlike every other fossil Pokemon where you only need one fossil that gets revived. The rockiness in their DNA likely goes away since you're combining 2 fossils together, so the more elemental and anatomical properties tied to the types of each fossil are expressed instead. We didn't get any new fossil Pokemon in Gen 9, but we did get the ancient Paradox Pokemon, which are kind of similar, and considering the fact that none of them are Rock type, I definitely think that Game Freak would be open to making non-Rock type fossils going forward that are also not complete abominations of science experiments. Next, we have Regieleki getting nerfed, but not Regidrago. Regieleki and Regidrago are part of the legendary giants, the Quintet. Yes, Quintet, not Sextet, because Regigigas is not part of the legendary giants. It is the creator of the group, not a member of the group itself. Sorry, I just had like a million people comment that on my canonical fan terms video, and I had to address it somewhere. Anyway, these two are unique since they were added in Gen 8, while the others were added in Gen 3, so you could even consider them to be a sub-duo within the Quintet. Now when Game Freak nerfs a pair or group of Pokemon, they almost always make the same changes for all members of the group, even if the whole group doesn't need to be nerfed. For example, all the abilities that change the type of normal moves to a different type were nerfed from 20% to 30%. All weather setting abilities were nerfed so that they only last 5 turns instead of the whole battle. Both Zacian and Zamazenta had their abilities and stats nerfed, and all the Treasures of Ruin had their stats proactively nerfed by 10 before being playable online. So, it was really weird to see that Game Freak only nerfed Regieleki's ability by reducing its power boost from 50% to 30% and not do the same thing for Regidrago. The main difference between these two, by the way, that made Eleki stronger than Drago in Sword and Shield was their base stat distribution, since a 200 speed stat is a lot more useful than a 200 HP stat, considering the fact that the rest of their stats are the same. Regieleki was commonly used for speed control in double since it got Electro Web, something that Regidrago doesn't really have to offer. Now even though Regieleki was nerfed in Gen 9, it also received a massive buff, Terra Blast. This is actually what resulted in its ban in singles, and it would have been even more powerful if the nerf to Transistor was never made. Next, we have Rayquaza being able to Mega Evolve without holding a Mega Stone. Mega Evolutions were introduced in Gen 6, and they're a temporary, in-battle form change that some Pokemon can perform. How it works is that once you have unlocked the Mega Ring or Mega Bracelet, you can give these select Pokemon their Mega Stone, which is what signifies to the game that a Pokemon is capable of Mega Evolving. For example, Lucario can Mega Evolve if and only if it holds the Lucario Knight held item. So, Rayquaza has to hold the Rayquazite held item to be able to Mega Evolve, right? No, The Rayquaza doesn't exist, and Rayquaza is able to Mega Evolve without needing to hold a Mega Stone. This is apparently because Rayquaza has an internal organ that can be filled with enough energy from consuming meteorites that it doesn't need the external Mega Stone to be able to Mega Evolve. All Rayquaza needs to be able to Mega Evolve in-game is knowing its signature move Dragon Ascent, a move that it will pretty much always want to use anyway, since it's just Flying type close combat. While this is cool from a lore perspective, it's also what makes Mega Rayquaza one of the most, if not the single most broken Pokemon of all time. Shout out to Groudon and Kyogre, which also break the rules, since they don't Mega Evolve, they Primal Revert, which is basically the same thing. It's an item-dependent, in-battle form change that increases their base stat total by 100, except it doesn't take up your Mega slot on your team, so you can have these two in addition to a Mega Evolution. The only drawback is that you can't choose to Primal Revert, it's forced as soon as the Pokemon enters battle, and there are times where you might not want to do that right away. Next, we have Rookidee not being a normal flying type. Along with the starters and legendaries, every Pokemon region is equipped with what fans call a regional bird or early route bird. Like the name suggests, they are bird-like Pokemon and are able to be caught early on during a playthrough of the game. From Generation 1 to 7, every single early route bird has been normal flying type at one point in its evolutionary line, which has just been really boring and repetitive. Fletchling at least loses the normal typing when it evolves, and we do have other regional bird adjacents like Zubat, Natu, Wingull, and Volibee that aren't normal type. In Gen 8, Game Freak decided that a regional bird no longer needs to be normal type since they introduced Rookidee, which is a pure flying type. It and Corvisquire are actually the only pure flying types in the game other than Tornadus. In Gen 9, it seems that Game Freak broke the rules again, but there's also not even a clear regional bird. Most people would probably say Wattrel, but you could also argue Squawkabilly since it appears earlier in the Pokédex, and the whole idea of these Pokemon is that they are available early in the game. Gen 9 has really broken a lot of traditions though, with the game being open world and all, and honestly, I really like it. Next, we have Iron Bundle being a glass cannon. Ice types are notoriously bad because of the complete anti-synergy between the type's inherent properties and the way that many Ice-type Pokemon's stats are arranged. Ice-Water types in particular were literally all built to be defensive, those being Dugong, Cloyster, Lapras, Walrein, and Arctovish. If you sum up their HP, defense, and special defense, which I understand isn't the best measure of bulk, but the details aren't super important here, they are all at least 265, with speed stats all being less than or equal to 70. Cloyster is really the only one that can function offensively at all, since it gets Shell Smash, but for the most part, the trend is clear that Game Freak really insists that Ice-Water types be built to be slow defensive tanks. That all changed with Iron Bundle, an Ice-Water type that has a bulk sum of only 230 and a speed stat of 136. The highest of any ice or water type in the game. It has a high 124 special attack stat too, and gets Freeze Dry, something that only Lapras and Arctovish get. Really the only thing it's missing is a consistent special water move, since it only gets Water Pulse, Hydro Pump, and Chilling Water, but Hydro Pump is still decent enough to get the job done most of the time. Next, we have Solgaleo and Lunala being part of an evolutionary line. The definition of a legendary Pokemon has always been kind of foggy, and it really just seems that it's whatever Game Freak decides. Something that has almost always been part of the definition though is not evolving, since every legendary Pokemon prior to Gen 7 follows that rule. However, Solgaleo and Lunala break that rule as they are part of an evolutionary line, with Cosmog evolving into Cosmoem at level 43, and Cosmoem having a split evolution to either Solgaleo or Lunala depending on the game at level 53. Gen 7 also introduced Type Null, another legendary Pokemon that evolves, just not a restricted legendary, and it evolves into Silvally via High Friendship, and Meltan, a mythical Pokemon that evolves into Melmetal when using 400 Meltan candy in Pokemon Go, which could also be considered breaking a tradition since it cannot evolve in any main series game. In Gen 8, we got Cubfu that evolves into Urshifu when exposed to a certain scroll, just further confirming the idea that legendaries can evolve. Urshifu then breaks another rule, which is that it breaks all rules of traditional defensive counterplay. Next, we have Skeledirge not being bipedal. All of the Fire-type starter Pokemon when fully evolved are bipedal, with some of them even starting out quadrupedal like Tepig, Fennekin, and Litten. They could have easily made Skeledirge bipedal too, since we have the existing Gator starter Feraligatr, but I'm glad they changed things up and made Skeledirge quadrupedal, and I'm especially glad that it's not another fire fighting type since we got 3 of those in a row. The Skeledirge line also breaks the fan theory regarding the Chinese zodiac, but this theory was honestly a pretty big stretch to begin with. In case you're unfamiliar, there's a theory going around that each fire-type starter is meant to be based on a different animal from the Chinese zodiac. Charmander is a dragon, Cyndaquil is a rat, Torchic is a rooster, Chimchar is a monkey, Tepig is a pig, Fennekin is a dog, Litten is a tiger, Scorbunny is a rabbit, and Fuecoco is a crocodile, which doesn't fit any of the animals on the Chinese zodiac. This theory completely falls apart at Gen 6 though, because Fennekin is clearly meant to be a fox, not a dog. Cyndaquil is also more like an echidna, not a rat, and Charmander might bear resemblance to dragons portrayed in Western media, but Chinese dragons are quite different. Lastly, we have Archaludon being a non-legendary, non-pseudo-legendary, non-mythical, non-mega evolution that has a base stat total of exactly 600. Prior to Gen 9, Pokemon with a base stat total of exactly 600 are necessarily part of one of the previously mentioned groups. For example, the legendary Pokemon Zygarde, all pseudo-legendary Pokemon, most mythical Pokemon, and Mega Scizor have a base stat total of exactly 600. Archaludon breaks this rule since it's not a legendary, not a pseudo-legendary, not a mythical, and not a mega evolution, but rather just a very powerful cross-generational evolution since you have to pay an extra $34.99 to obtain it. It is in the 600 Club, which is a Japanese-made group, but the only Western group it might be in is pseudo-legendary Pokemon, which was originally just a fan-made group, but was recently made into an official group called Powerhouse Pokemon, and Archaludon is not included. In another video, I suggested how I thought Archaludon should be included in this group, but with all the comments I got suggesting otherwise, I can definitely see why it shouldn't. However, with all the tradition and rule breaking that we've discussed in this video, it's definitely not unreasonable to suggest that maybe Archaludon is meant to be part of this group too. And those are times that Game Freak broke the Pokemon rules by going against a previously established tradition. Let me know if you disagree with any of my reasonings or feel that I missed any. Anyway, if you want to support me and my channel, just leave a nice comment since I do read all comments. You can also become a member for 99 US cents a month to get a badge next to your name and early video access like all of these lovely people. If you want bonus content, check out my second channel, Extra Bell, where I post videos I've scrapped from the main channel as well as more casual unscripted videos. Likes are also one of the ways that YouTube determines if a video should be passed around to more people, so if you feel that this video deserves to be, I would appreciate it. Thanks for watching.